Thanks very much, Richard. And Shakespeare's point about tongues in trees is that we're surrounded by wisdom. There's always know-how and knowledge waiting to be plucked out. I was really interested in what Catherine was saying just now, because I'm sitting here, the last of these four speakers, and thinking, oh, these are so great. There's so much interesting information. They're such good speakers. What the heck am I going to have to say to follow up on that? So perhaps I should be asking for Catherine's advice going forward. So I'm going to be looking at this from a slightly different perspective. There's been a lot of discussion about how, because of hybrid working and working from home and so on, that the office life is intruding on the home life, that the boundaries are decaying. One of my coaching clients a couple of days ago said that his house is no longer a refuge. He feels now that it's just an extension of the office, and he feels all at sea. He doesn't feel as if he has the resilience and the strength to be able to treat the home as a refuge, as a place of security. So there's a blurring that way, but it also seems to me the blurring is going the other way too. A lot of the coaching I do, of course, is online. A lot of the training I do is online, in person too, but a lot of it online still. And most of the people I work with now seem to be dressing like me. In other words, like glorified tramps. If I were to stand up, you would see that I'm just wearing holy tracksuit bottoms, because it doesn't matter anymore. And this kind of growing informality, I think, is going both ways. And I think it's terrific, because what it means is that there can be more honesty, more candor, more authenticity, and all of that is lovely. But putting that aside for a moment, there are also other things which I'm starting to see coming into the working environment from the home life. And some of these things are really, in my experience, very serious. Bit of background information: my wife is a supervisor for an education authority on educational support for long-term medical absences for children. And she and her colleagues are describing an absolute epidemic post-pandemic of children suffering from a range of disabilities. Stephen interestingly said there are 18% of people with disabilities either hidden or seen. There's a huge amount of unseen disability and mental disability, mental illnesses growing up, quite aside from the physical ones. And this is an epidemic which I do not believe that this country is yet equipped to start to contemplate. Now, bringing it more specifically to professional services, if I'm working as a senior partner in a firm, if I'm trying to juggle lots of different things in my life, if my work life is intruding into my home life and vice versa, I am struggling greatly with these pressures. Catherine talked about the stamina muscle, talked about building resilience, and that is marvelous. But in my experience, most of the people who are experiencing this don't have the support, don't have the infrastructure in place in their firms to help them to do so. I have in mind a couple of my current coaching clients, and I'm not going to go into detail, of course, because this is confidential, but they are grappling with enormous pan-jurisdictional issues. One has responsibility for Central and Eastern Europe. Well, given the current circumstances with Ukraine, just imagine how difficult that is for them to be managing. On top of that, they have kids who have been affected by 2 years of lockdown. At their most plastic developmental stage of psychological growth, they have had this affective trauma. One of those children is evidencing certain other psychological issues and so on. And this is putting an enormous burden on this individual. And in my experience and anecdotal exchanges with colleagues and associates, this is by no means a unique example. So I was very interested when Dana earlier said how important it is that firms start to listen from the ground up. This has to be systemic. I think that firms have to move on to effectively a war footing to develop a much more proactive approach to positive psychology, to support, to being aware of all the challenges that their partners, their associates, everyone in the organizations are facing. Because if they don't, I think that we're going to be facing some really quite challenging times ahead. There's been the Great Resignation, of course, and that is continuing. but my suspicion is that's going to be a relatively minor phenomenon compared to what might be coming down the pike. So in terms of how to deal with it, I mean, from a personal standpoint, I never go into a coaching encounter now assuming that the object of the discussion, building a business plan, creating better leadership, being better as a salesperson, is going to be the meaningful issue. I go in assuming that that is the tip of the iceberg, that there are other issues that often they're waiting to talk about, to reflect upon, simply to be heard about, and to go at it from that standpoint, to allow their reality to emerge, and then compassionately to give them the kinds of tools that they can work with to manage that. Richard's just put his finger up. I would just go back to some of the great things that Catherine said, some of the great things that Dana and Steve had said here. It's all coming together in a really lovely holistic mix, and it would be terrific to stay for another hour or two and really explore these in depth. But anyway, Richard, back to you.